to yet another episode of the Sri Lankan Understanding. Where were we as a country? Where are we now? And how does this shape where we are going? And I want to explore this through the lens of women's histories. How have women in Sri Lanka contributed and continue to contribute in different sectors? And today I want to talk about the environment, environmental conservation and women's roles in this. Thank you to our location sponsor, the Mount Lavinia Hotel. My name is Shanuki Dialvis, and with me today I have Deshini Abeyewardena. She's the chairperson of the Environmental Foundation Limited. You would have heard about this organization in the media. It's been doing some spectacular work in protecting our forests and our biodiversity. And I'm so pleased to have you. Thank you for being on the show, Deshini. And one of the reasons I wanted to speak with you was, and we were talking about this before we started rolling camera, you're not a scientist, you're not a professor of biological or environmental studies, and you've been in the corporate sector. And somehow now you are making significant impact together with others on protecting and conserving Sri Lanka. How did that come about? How did your purpose turn into this?
Okay. First, Shanaki, thank you very much for having me. I'd really like to talk more about what's going on in EFL and in the conservation space. So my journey has been, as you know, I'm a corporate person. I'm an accountant by profession, and working in banks and corporates. But also I think at some point in my life, actually early 20s, I was thinking about some of the way here is when I thought most of us, we don't actually try to make the change that we want to see. We just keep talking about it, or we blame someone for something that's going wrong. So in my early 20s, I actually joined the government and worked for 6 years in the finance ministry, working on a number of reforms and things. And I think that's where possibly it was a route to have this purpose of thinking, okay, we can make a change. Yeah. Because before that, I used to always feel, where there and we can't make any changes, we're just helpless. So I spent 6 years in government. I went back into the corporate sector. And in 2013, Shamini Ratwata, who's also a finance person, but who was involved with EFL, invited me to the board. So I went into the board really to help them, set up the systems and hire and fire people. So it's always been a huge challenge to run an NGO, because people don't fund things like that. We have to find our own funding. So when a number of us actually went back on the board there, we had like 2 people working at EFL. And so we fought our way up. And it's just been a journey where I think, like I said, my purpose is be the change you want to see. And I felt that the corporate world and society at large, they work hard because they want to leave something tangible for their kids. Mostly it will be a house, it will be money, and they don't think any further than that. So over the years I used to see what's going on around us and think, okay, we need to leave them the fundamentals of a good environment, which is water, safe, unpolluted air, and basic rights of a person, which is actually enshrined in our constitution. Yeah. And that's really how my journey began at EFL. So it's been since 12 years now. Wow. And I've been the chairperson for the last 2 years.
And there has been quite a lot of impact and quite a lot of progress made in kind of those pathways you have been creating with your team. And that's what I wanted to talk about, women especially. Now in Sri Lanka, we have a legacy and a history of living in symbiosis with nature, right? And a lot of this sort of practices of conservation or practices of protection and nurturing and working with the environment has been by women, indigenously, traditionally, and in sort of your experiences with the work you've done in EFL. How have you seen sort of these legacies influencing the way Sri Lanka is practicing conservation today? How are women sort of contributing? Are women contributing with their indigenous knowledge? Is there traditional practice and culture that is coming into how we are looking at preserving our environment?
So that's a hard call for me. to really understand how much is being done by women and how much by men. So I think seeing that, I think 26% of our households are women-led. I guess there is and you know, where basically for them, the management of their resources is a huge issue for them. So I think they kind of look at conservation in that, how do we reduce our output?
Yeah.
In output as in waste. So they would recycle, you know, they would do different things. But other than that, I would say conservation is something, I mean, going back from the chronicles of, I think, the Mahavansa, right? So it's been something that's been in our DNA. We see the old kings talk about it. Like I said, it's enshrined in our constitution. Section 27:14 talks about the duty of the state, that it's responsible to preserve, protect, and improve our environment. It also requires, or it reposes a responsibility on our community, on all the people of this country, irrespective of your gender, to preserve our riches, our natural riches. So I think men and women are both conscious about it. I think women being you know, like I said, obviously the women-led households have had to have maybe more focus on how they minimize waste. So they would be recycling, they would be possibly looking at, you know, home gardens, they'd be looking at maybe, you know, beekeeping and various things that maybe they don't also really know that they're conserving nature. I think it's more a case of wondering how best they could manage. But having said that, I mean, there have been so many women who've been at the forefront of fighting for causes in this country.
And those are the women that I'd like to hear about, and we will as soon as we get back from the commercial break. Welcome back, and today we're talking about the role that women have played in Sri Lanka's history in environmental conservation and preservation, and we were talking about the different ways in which women have sort of maybe even subconsciously contributed to this Conservation Act. Do you know of any sort of, can you share with me any anecdotes or about any women's groups or how they have contributed? Because when I was doing some sort of research, I found, like, I was surprised that there are so many women-led organizations, environmental organizations, and you don't hear of them, you don't hear of these women's voices on the ground. Can you tell me a little bit about what are they doing and how have they been doing it, and why are their voices being sidelined?
Okay, so maybe first let me start with some of the ladies who come to my mind. Irangani Serasinghe was such a force when she started Rukkrakagano to protect Singharaja. When there was a move at that time to cut Singharaja and sell plywood, export plywood, which, you know, somebody thought was a great idea for export earnings. So I think she was one of maybe the first ladies to have a formal organization.
And to have that reach, that
and
audience.
To have that huge audience. So there was Irangani, there was Mrs. Kamini Vitarna, her sister. Then there was, I think, Nirmala Dimel. And ladies so this must have been a good 60 years ago, I think, when they really started this movement. And since then, so since I've kind of got involved with this, I see a lot of women and men. But I see also a lot of females studying about the environment. I see so many people involved in different aspects of it. So as you said, there are the scientists, there are even the lawyers who have, you know, taken it upon themselves, because I think once they understand the ramifications of what's going on and what unsustainable development is doing to the country, there have been people, I mean, I see now, if I look at EFL, for instance, I think we started off with Shamini being our CEO, our chairperson, maybe 18 or 19 years ago. But since then, our head of legal, I think, has mostly been a woman. So we are fighting cases. I see so many scientists who are studying environmental law. I see so many lawyers. I mean, we work really closely with the Attorney General's department in right now we're doing a project on combating illegal wildlife trade. So we're actually talking to all the enforcement agencies, and it's so heartening to see so many women who are really committed, who are, and really take their job seriously. But I have to say, I think it's a balance, and I think people need to understand that it affects all segments of society. Climate change, polluted water, polluted air, polluted earth affects everybody.
True, it does. But I think if you can just tell me about, because we women, I feel like, are stakeholders in this movement more because it disproportionately impacts women, right? Climate crisis. And in sort of the women that you have spoken of in the legal front or whatever, have you sort of encountered resistance, political or social resistance to women being these voices at the forefront at any point?
So see, this is a question that I've been asked many times, and I can say, as being a corporate person, actually working even in the government, so I used to be out in the field working in sugar plantations, tea plantations. I think the pushback we felt would have been felt by a man or a woman. But I think it's up to us to show that we don't need to back down. In that I've never not been able to get anything done because I was a woman. And I worked in the men's arena. So I tell women, don't really think about it. I don't actually think of whether I'm female or male when I go in to solve some issue. So even right now, we're working with all of the ministries. And so when they push back, I don't think of it as being, are they pushing back because I'm a woman? So sometimes it's, we're trying to, sometimes there's lack of understanding, so they would push back. And I think maybe being a woman, maybe we are more, the men are not going to like me for it, but less egocentric. So we go down and explain whatever we are saying. So you can possibly get people to listen to you. And I think that's something, maybe a reason that women, can get things done. But to be honest, I don't really see, or I don't feel it as being pushed back because I'm a woman, or because our staff are women, because our ladies are, when we have a case going on, for instance, they'll be in Vilpattu, they'll be in Vedithalativu in a mangrove, they'll be in courts, and they face sometimes even a lot of antagonism, which they take in their stride and move on with what has to be done. So I think the message I would give any woman out there is that you set your own boundaries and you set your limit, and you don't need to do that.
And
you just need to push.
Globally also, maybe sort of when you see public visual advocacy for environmental sort of activism, a lot of the time those visuals are of women who are, I don't know, like the tree huggers movements, and the bringing spirituality into environment and sort of conserving and honoring nature. It's a lot of women who are kind of leading that movement, and yet when it comes to political and legal battles, somehow the voices, I don't know, it just feels like the patriarchy seems to dismiss the voices of women. Don't you feel
I
that?
actually do. Sometimes I feel that because we are a matriarchal society also, that women actually do have a voice. Honestly, I can say, as a woman and dealing with most of our staff who are women, again at EFL, I think we have 2 men, and we have a bunch of women, and it's been that for a long time. So again, I don't know whether they are getting into that because that's a passion. So that's, like you said, some unconscious reason why they want to get into it. They're taking ownership and they're saying, okay, we want to fight this battle. But once they're there, I feel that they have a voice. They really have a voice. And it's another thing that I'm seeing now is that, like I said, I'm an accountant, and so I deal a lot with the scientists. So what I think, again, the women need to do is, people tell me all the time, you gave me a label of being a conservationist, again coming from this fact that they feel that I'm a nurturer and I'm doing this because I like it, and it's a warm, fuzzy feeling. And my response is always, look, I'm not any conservationist. I'm an accountant, I've been a business person, but it's simply that I understand that preserving our environment just lets future generations live. our generation and the future generations live the way they want to live.
Yeah.
So it's to do with science. So I would actually encourage women to understand the science of why we are doing certain things. So while there is, all the cultural aspects of looking after our environment, science now has come to an extent where they actually will showcase the implications of what you're doing very fast. So I think, again, I would go back to saying while women are nurturing, while women are taking forward some of our old practices, one practice which I learned pretty late in my life was that during the New Year, the Sinhala and Tamil New Year, women would go and drop a coin in the well, which they keep in there with some flowers. So it is basically to say thank you for the water. Okay. So we've had those, but I think also it's time now to look at the status quo now. Learn from what they've done, look at today's status quo. There have to be so many changes in how we manage this environment. And to men and women, it's like, I would say it's time to wake up and look at what we have to do to just be able to survive.
Yeah.
And to the women, it is like you don't need to get stereotyped and you don't need to set any boundaries.
Cool. And so when we come back after this commercial break, I would like to talk about exactly that. How do we encourage more women to become a part of this movement? We'll be back. Welcome back, and we are talking about women's contributions and roles in environmental conservation with Deshini over here. And we were just talking during the break, like what are some of these, shall I say, legacies, traditional knowledges or wisdoms in Sri Lanka especially that we can pass down to women, and how do we inspire younger women, especially like the new generations, to really understand the value of being a part of this movement and to sort of invest in really getting on board.
Okay. So the traditional knowledge that has been passed down, I think traditionally people knew how to live in harmony with nature. If you looked at the ancient way in which they even sowed a paddy field, they would leave some part of the plantation for the birds. People would always look at, like I was talking about earlier, they'd, look at conserving water. There's an anecdotal story that I heard again from someone saying that a mother-in-law would even look at how much water a prospective bride would use to wash something to see whether this one is going to suit her son or not. So, there's so many, I think people really knew how to live in harmony with nature and with animals, and with, they knew basically the cycle of life, how it had to work. Fast forward to now, things have changed. So we have a growing population, we have, maybe a lot of urban growth and development, so that the amount left for maybe agriculture is even less. So I think it's important now that today's generation learns to look at, while looking at the key areas that, what our ancestors were doing in preserving our environment, they need to bring it forward to the 21st century and to look at what's out there, to look at the science of how you can help it, because too often I see people just paying lip service, but they don't really know what has to be done. And so I would say there are so many qualified people out there. I mean, I wouldn't do anything without speaking to the scientists. Right. I wouldn't make any statement without speaking to the scientists. And I go out there and, I see so many people talking about things that aren't even technically correct. For instance, I see very often Sri Lanka being touted as a biodiversity hotspot, like it's something really fantastic to talk about. But I learned from the scientists only last year that a biodiversity hotspot means that it's a geographical area that has had a lot of flora and fauna and a lot of diverse biodiversity, which is under threat from human habitat.
Right.
and which has been threatened and which has been lost.
So these are not bragging rights.
It's something we shouldn't be bragging about, but because people don't go and ask the people who know this knowledge, who have this, we are really not doing the right thing, I feel. So I would tell, you know, all the young girls and boys out there, go to the experts and learn what you have to do.
Yeah.
And then you find that little changes in our day-to-day life, in our day-to-day behavior can actually have a huge impact.
Yeah. And if you look at, if I were to ask you, Deshini, if you can draw parallels or find comparisons with the global ecofeminist movements and in Sri Lanka, how much of a gap do we need to close in the way forward in terms of policy and in terms of mindset change? What is your vision? What's that ideal world that we should have formed in this country? Where do we need to go? And how can women kind of be, I know I'm harping on the women thing, but how can we really be at the forefront of this?
So if I just go back to just start from the last point that you mentioned, how are women at the forefront? So I think a lot of how we behave comes from our value system at home, and the person who's responsible for that value system is mostly the mother.
Yeah.
So I would say if the woman understands what needs to be done, that knowledge and that practice, it's really what you see is what the children will follow on with. So I think that's imperative that the message gets across. From a global level, so we've been working again at EFL with some women-led organizations. We have people connecting with us because they see so many women in our organization. And I think when I look at, compare, say, our laws with what's out there globally, our laws are very good. We have fantastic legislation, we have regulations, we have everything in place, but what we are lacking is implementation. And we are also a nation of people who just take what we are given. So I think my message to everyone really, maybe like, you know, like I said, maybe women are more vocal because maybe we want to leave something better, possibly. So it would be to, you know, be vocal. If you see something, find someone you can complain on about something to, or find a way that you can do something better, where it has a better impact on the environment. Our interaction with the global movement would be just learn from what's going on there. We don't need to reinvent the wheel because a lot of it is happening. We've seen the impact of climate change around the world. I know Sri Lanka has been looking at now climate adaptation plan. People need to be aware of that. People need to be aware of, you know, why are people doing certain things. For instance, like I said, people would call me a conservationist. And I'm like, no, there's no such term. And I certainly wouldn't give myself a label like that. Just said I would understand the implications of what's going on, of some kind of activity, mostly to do with development. And while development certainly has to happen, people need to bring in the experts to have sustainable development.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has been done, the research has been done globally. We just need to tap into it, be aware, look at what's going on globally, look at the situation in this country. At the end of the day, we have 65,000 square kilometers. You know, how easy is that to manage? Just breaks my heart when I see what we do with it.
Yeah, yeah. And ultimately, we are all impacted. We don't think, just because you don't see it in your immediate environment doesn't mean that, you know, the country that you're living in and this 65,000 square meters that we have, this is all we have.
It's
and
all
you know,
we
and
have.
it is the onus is on us to make sure that we protect it and we make sure that it's available.
See, we are feeling it right now, right? So we are experiencing heat that we've never experienced before. We are having floods, we are having landslides, we are having dengue and chikungunya and things, which are all due to unsustainable practices. I mean, those, from what I'm again learning from the scientists, all these animals were in the forested areas, they didn't come out.
Yeah.
So there's so many zoonotic diseases, even COVID, you know, things because of the impact of unsustainable development.
Thank you for the conversation. It is something that I would love to sort of continue because I'm so curious and I want to learn, and I think that's that's kind of something that we should all make more effort to do, is to learn about our role in taking care of this world that we live in, for us and for the future. And so please do make an effort to talk to the scientists, advocate, get involved in activism if you can, if you have the means to do so, or support those who do, like EFL, with the yeoman work that you're doing for the country. Thank you so much for being a part of this episode, and thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time.